Hello everyone, and we're live. Today's guest is someone who I met, I think about maybe a year ago, through Ismay, and he's an absolutely fantastic guy. He's known as a sales relationship coach. Um, Jason has so many years experience, and I was just touching on this before we went live. He's 25 years experience in sales training, and working with teams to really work on the relationship side of sales. So anyone that's really struggling on closing a sale, how to start a sale, how to get those relationships forming in your business, please reach out to Jason. He's absolutely phenomenal when it comes to this side of things. I've had the pleasure of being on a course with Jason, and he's really, really hands-on. So when he talks about sales, it's not just the theoretical side, it's very much a practical take home. So have a pen and paper out, take notes, because you will definitely want to take them when you hear him speak. And he has an amazing podcast as well for anyone that wants to listen in. He's a global sales leader podcast series, which is absolutely brilliant for anyone that wants to learn. And his podcast is on nearly I was listening to it myself on Google Podcast, but I think it's across all the platforms as well. And he's also an NLP practitioner, master practitioner. So he comes at it from a very different aspect to maybe most people that would look at things. So welcome, Jason. It's fantastic to have you here today.
Welcome. Thank you so much. I'm really old now 25 years stuff, and it's wow, Scott, it really has come quickly. So I really appreciate that, and thanks for the nice introduction. And while I was doing that, the phone rang. Typical, always. So I had to mute myself and do that. But that's just the nature of the beast. So sometimes you just have to be prepared and just pivot on everything that you do and change your approach to absolutely everything. Because when things happen like that, and when the phone goes on and you're in a live broadcast like this, you have to pivot, and then you have to sort of make sure that you're in the room, make sure that your approach is actually to be completely focused in on what you're doing right now. And right now is speaking to yourself, Louise. So I really appreciate the kind introduction.
Thank you. So I suppose I'm coming from a retail background. I was in it 15 years myself, and I suppose sales, predominantly when we would look at, I suppose, training people in with sales, it would always come down to, I don't know how you think about this, but it would be, how comfortable people are with it. And a lot of people, I found when I was training them, they were very worried they'd come across like the car salesman when a customer entered the store. Oh, I don't really want to come across this way, Louise. I want to be really authentic in the way that I approach customers, but also we want to convert customers. We want to obviously see that happen as well. So I suppose, do you have any strategies that you would maybe talk about with people that are really, I suppose it's not really sitting with them very well. They don't really know how to make that process authentic to them.
Well, just for a moment, I when I started my career out, I was in retail management. So I did a good few years in retail. So I really understand retail from that point of view, because it's always about the good touch points to make the people feel more special than they actually are. When they walk in, they're obviously in there for a reason. They're browsing, they're doing something, but something's got their imagination to actually visit that store. So make them feel welcome, make them feel comfortable, make them feel that they are special, that make them feel that they're valued. I think this is so important, to make sure that you really understand the people that are actually coming in. They don't want to be hassled, they don't want to be hounded, but they want to be appreciated. So when they do come into any retail store, and I've worked with a number of retail stores in my time, training them to be more effective what they do. It's just to notice them, just to say, hi, how are you doing today? The weather is a little bit terrible, and the weather is terrible today in Ireland. But just spark off a conversation, but not a conversation about just a normal conversation that you welcome them into the store and go and respect them, because what we're doing here is we're building up relationships with our clients, because what we want to do is hope that they come back in again and visit you. Like the big chain stores that people come in mass, but it is to respect them and it is to see them from their point of view. If they're going out and browsing, and people do in retail, as we all know, don't go up to them, anything I can do to help you? And you know what you're going to expect, don't you?
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what the obvious thing is going to happen is, no, no, thanks. You've given them a sort of an open and closed question, and you go, no, leave me alone, rather than the approach of just having a general conversation with someone. Uh,
Mm, mm,
because you go into a big retail store with lots of clothing, and I worked a few years ago. I co-founded a online fashion store, and I had to
mm,
go out to independent fashion boutiques, and I used to help them sell their products online. And I would stand there and look at the approach. Some really good approaches and some terrible approaches. It's really to engage with the person and get them to talk about what they want. It's all about them. It's not about you.
mm,
Engage in a conversation. Build those relationships up one at a time, especially if they're return customers. And
mm,
if you know who they are and you remember who they are, I said, just bring that up in subject. Oh, you came a month or two ago. Bring that up into a conversation so you can build those genuine relationships with them, because sales is always about relationships. Retail, business to business, business to consumer, it makes no difference. It is that connection and that connectability, the likability, the trust. Trust is one of the big things that you can always do within sales.
yeah.
Say that you can help them, say that you will do more than they ever expect you to, because people like that. Whether it's on the phone, whether it's customer service, it's all the same. It's all the same. And use your language correctly.
Mm. I think language is a big one. I think definitely, and I think you touched on it there. When you said the whole closed questions and open questions thing, and I think building that kind of trust. I suppose from for anyone listening out there that is managing people, what would you suggest that they maybe look at doing, or maybe doing, we do a lot of role plays in
Yeah,
retail, and that's obviously the best way to kind of, I suppose, to reenact those
yeah.
scenarios that happen, be it a bad customer experience. You might want to reenact how to deal with that, or again, rejection, you mightn't be getting the basket value up, so how do you deal with that? Would you have any, I suppose, ideas or strategies around how maybe that you can improve on that, those kind of soft skills, or what you would do?
One of the biggest soft skills is that thing between there. It's called ears.
Yes, yes,
Really intently listen.
yeah,
Listen to understand. That
yeah,
something that I do is in a role play situation is I get everyone to talk at the same time. You might have experienced that when we were doing the ISME stuff. But the reason I get everyone to speak at the same time in a role play situation is because I want to make a point is, what did you hear? What did you notice? What did you understand? And generally no one notices anything. I said, well, that's what's going on in your head, because you're automatically thinking of the next question to ask, the next thing to say, rather than really listening to understand what's actually being said. The clarity of looking at the person, reading them. And I did a post the other day, is listening with the eyes. And what I mean by listening with the eyes is you're feeding information and you're listening to the body language. You're listening to what they're actually saying. The face and the body language is absolutely core and key to really understand what they are. So, as we know, a lot of what we say is nonverbal. A lot of what we do is non-verbal. So you're listening to the variances of what the actually, when the from the tense of the body language, it's either closed or open, and if the head might be moving to the door after you approach them in the sales process because they want to leave, because you've approached them in a negative connotation as opposed to a positive way. So when also you listen again, you're listening to the tone, the tonality of how they're actually saying it, so that you can actually listen a little bit more intently to maybe understand, ask a question, paraphrase back to them what you've understood. Thing that always, that you go to a really good posh restaurant and they come around the table, they take your order and they memorize it if it's a really good restaurant, rather than writing it down. And then they go around the table and then they go, well, you got that, so you got that, and you got that, and you got that. That's professionalism. That is the core essence of what we do as sales professionals. And that's a waiter at a really top restaurant. They go around and they just repeat what has been said individually. Oh, you wanted that medium rare, you wanted a glass of Chateau off the Pap with that, and blah, 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 whatever else with that. And that is really listening and deep listening and actively, it's whatever you want to call it. It's just proper listening. It's really, so that takes lots of practice, lots of core role playing, understanding, practicing the real world, and getting some feedback from the customers by the non-verbal cues, what they're saying, because that's hugely important. So that's just one area that we can do. But then it's the language that we use around that. Everything has to be done in a positive sense, positive language and the linguistics that we use. But it's okay to be quiet as well. Because what we have in salespeople, we always think that we're doing most of the talking. I'm probably doing most of the talking today. But in reality, we do 30% of the talking and 70% the other person is doing the talking for you. It's all about them. It's not about you. That's the way to always say it in any form of sales, whether it's retail, business to business, and business to consumer, and whichever facet that you want to see. It's all about them. So listen to understand and ask some really good questions about what they need and what they desire and what looks good and what feels good to get them into the future state of what they can see in their heads. Because everything is done by our mirror neurons, which is in the frontal lobe of our brain. People like people and brands they like and trust, but they also like people and brands that they can connect with. So if your brand, your retail brand, you're the personal brand within the organization. So start getting up there and doing it.
I just some really great insights that you gave there. And I'm just going to go and I'm going to pick them out. But as you were talking, the paraphrasing, really powerful. And I think paraphrasing, you can actually sometimes use that. I use that in coaching where I might repeat back what the client says. So I think that's really important, paraphrasing back to the customer. I think, again, you said the 70-30 rule. So 30% of the talking from yourself, if you're a sales associate, and 70% of that customer telling you, you're just asking those great opening ended questions. And by making that a top class service, really using those, we should be using these twice as much as we're using our mouth. So definitely. And I think it's quite hard sometimes with salespeople because they're quite enthusiastic and they're quite bubbly and they're quite passionate. And I think sometimes that passion maybe is where they're maybe talking. They're quite extroverted. Usually a lot of salespeople, they do like to talk a lot, and that's how they connect and get their energy. So I think it's maybe finding that happy balance where they're talking, but they're also getting that connection going with the customer. I suppose, have you ever had an experience you can share with us whereby you talked about the restaurant there, but where you can say, this is the pinnacle, this is where I feel sales should be at, and this is where sales is at the moment? Where do you feel that gap is at the moment as a sales relationship coach?
It's the soft skills, the hard skills, which is the technology and all of that. That's the easy to learn. The soft skills is the language, how we question in the right way, and it really is to peel the onion, really understand where the core actual value actually is for the client and how you can actually impact the client. Something that I've learned, I've recently mastered a train the trainer on Richardson consultative selling, and it is, and it always is, it's peeling the onion, asking another question, ask another question, and then ask another question. Like, it's not an interrogation here, so make sure that we don't get there. It's we're not the FBI, we're not being held up to ransom or whatever, but it's the negotiation and asking the right questions to make people feel quite comfortable about where they actually are. And we talk about paraphrasing. I think that's the utmost respect because people like to be heard, people like to be understood. So when you do say things back to the client or paraphrase it or package it back to the client in whichever shape or form, I think people appreciate it because you've been understood. You know that you've been listened to. They know that it's all about them. And it's all about them and the value that you can bring to them to the table. So all of that plus more, it's practice, 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 practice. And again, nothing comes easy. So even when you think that you're an expert at what you do, practice even more, learn about the latest things that can help you move forward, because it's always about moving to the next step. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. But once you get the feedback, it's feed forward. So feed forward is really to bring yourself in a positive sense. It's how you can learn from what you've done, to how you can learn to what you're going to do, and improve on the strategy, the approach that's going to work better for you next time. So it's always about the next time. Put yourself in the present, plant yourself in the future of how you can improve that approach, the strategy, that process, whatever it is. And it is a natural process. And just to come back to what you just said, salespeople can be bubbly, they can be extrovert, but there's also really good, passionate introverts that are
I actually was going to ask you about
extremely good,
this. Yes, yeah.
extremely good salespeople,
Mm,
because they're not the ones that are going out. They're probably a little bit more standoffish,
mm,
but that's a good thing
yeah.
because everyone is different. So
Mm,
there needs to be a different approach for every single person. They can be extroverts, they can be introverts. So
mm,
it's also about really understanding the areas of the communication that you, when you approach someone. And as I said, we have something in our brains called a mirror neuron. It's likability, trust, and that connection. So you have to
mm,
change your style to suit the other person, because if they're all like that and they're ambition jumping up and down, maybe you need to be like that. But maybe if the other person is quiet and
mm,
solemn and calm, maybe you need to be like that as well. So have the approach
mm.
that works for the client, but also you feel comfortable in doing yourself. Don't,
Yeah.
I was going to say actually, because it's the be the authentic you, be
Yeah.
the person that you truly are. Don't pretend to be
Mm,
someone that you're not.
mm,
And
yeah.
I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and when they dance at that age, they pretend to be their famous pop star, their
Yeah.
TikToker or whatever.
Yeah.
That's good, but
Mm,
again, you had to bring it back to hard facts. If you see
mm,
someone that you like and trust and respect, they're out there in social media, or they're I don't know, top presenter or whatever it might be, something that you admire. Take
mm,
the aspects of what they've got, bring it
mm.
into your own.
Yeah. I was listening to you there, and what came up was that, and I do this in coaching, it's the whole mirroring. So, I would have quite high energy naturally. I'd be quite but when I've a client that maybe is at that maybe a lower energy level, that I
Mm.
would try and match, and that's obviously to make that a safe space for them. So I can totally relate to the mirroring. It's making that person a little bit more, I suppose, comfortable but relatable also to you, and building that trust factor, which is super important, I think, as well. um I worked in a lots of different retailers. Okay, some massive ones, like 600 plus stores. I worked in really small ones. And what I always found, and I could never get my head around it, was, Jason, it didn't matter if it was a person that ran that business as a sole trader or it was a massive organization. They would very much have a one size fits all model, and you touched on that earlier. And it was something that I could never actually get my head around, because I had all of these different personalities in my business, but I had the same induction program, the same
Yeah,
sales modules to do with everyone, and we're really boxing those people off. And it never used to sit with me, because we measured these metrics based on, that they had to behave a certain way, but we're
yeah,
we're not being authentic when we're actually asking people to behave that certain way.
yeah,
um what's your take on that? Because that's something that I always was like, if I ever go into training, it will never be, that whole, you have to be this certain way. And I loved when you brought up the extrovert piece, because it was something that was in the back of my head, because
yeah,
I have worked with extroverts, and sometimes they feel they don't fit the mold, but they're actually really, really great sellers, and you don't hear them on the shop floor. But
yeah,
what you do see is, you see them bringing the customer to the till, and they have a ginormous sale,
yeah,
because you know what, the customer really bought into that. their personality and them being their authentic self, like you touched on there.
Yeah, I think that's all very core, and it is matching the people to how they are, not you are. If they're standoffish, then you approach it in a slightly different way.
Mm,
And while I was thinking that, I go to my favorite retailer in town. I've been going there for years. They know me by name. I
love
did
it.
some business with them ages ago, but I go in there and they go, "Hey, Jason." I go, "Hey, Stephen. Hey, Bobby." And they go, "Oh, I got some lovely, beautiful stuff that we got in from Spain the other week. I'll show it to you in a minute, but would you like to have a beer first?" And I go,
Oh,
"Yep, I'll have a beer first." And I sit down there and relax, and we start chatting about the weather, and we start chatting about, oh, where you been, and all of that. And it's really nice and really engaging, really nice setting, and just feel nice and chilled. I did go in there with the kids the other time. He said, "Oh, I bet." He said, "You better go and come back another time without the kids." So they were laughing and joking, and we were having fun, and
mm,
that's what I liked. And it was a really personable. They've been doing it for years, so they're really experienced about what they do. And then they keep bringing stuff out. Said, I think this would look lovely with what you've got and how you style yourself. I remember you from last time, Jason, and these sort of will fit you, or whatever it might be." And a really good personable approach.
mm.
And that's what the independent retailers do really, really well,
Yeah.
especially the ones that have been doing it for a while. But when you get that special experience, the larger brands are probably slightly different. But it makes the difference. Even when I was in Dunnes stores the other day, it makes the difference when you're at the checkout that the people just go, "Hey, how are you today?"
Mm,
And really nice to me, making me feel, and they start having a little bit of a conversation with me, and that is really good. I like that. It doesn't
mm,
happen all the time, but I remembered that,
mm.
and that's the thing that we need to transfer. Is we need to transfer that experience, that emotional connection, so they remember you for the next time, and you look out for them. You look out. I just had my hair cut from my barber, and I always look out for my same barber because I built a good relationship with them, and
Yeah.
they come back and we had the same banter and same chat. With retail all over, should be similar.
Mm,
Should actually be that personable experience that you like, trust, and you can do that on the bigger brands as well. So that's where we need to slightly vary
mm.
the training, the induction training that people get to make it more of a practical approach to how humans sell. And we are humans at the end of the day, and we all are slightly different. And we all like to feel special and nice and trusted and connected with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I do think what you touched on there, it really brings it back to basics, I think. Brings it back to and humanizes it a little bit, because I think a lot of brands get caught up in product that, and a lot of retailers I speak to, they're talking to me 60 to 70% of the time about that product.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is most people have these things now, right? We've
Yeah.
already done our research. So most of the things that if it's a high price ticket item, or if we've an idea, even if it's an outfit, I might
Yeah.
look at something on Instagram and go, actually, I really like that outfit. I might go to my local boutique or local high street retailer and go, I want to actually create that outfit because I think
Yeah.
it'd be fun for a night out. So most of us have done a little bit of a research. I think what you touched on there was asking those questions, the needs, the trust piece. And I do think a lot of things I speak about with people is independent retailers and large multinationals can learn from one another. And I
Mm.
think definitely the customer service that the large organizations can learn from the independents. And from a structuring and operational aspect, the independents can learn from the larger scale on a smaller scale. So,
Yeah.
might be the management of different aspects of the business. But I think that approach is it's just so refreshing to hear. Now, I listen to a podcast you done because I could listen to you all day. You're really easy to listen to, and your
I,
personality.
I'm good at bedtime sleeping. I help people go to sleep.
You don't. You're not on the Calm app. You wouldn't be on that calming app. Definitely, you'd be on the opposite, the energizing app. If there was an energizing app, Jason would be on that to give you energy. But I love listening to you because you're quite bubbly, your personality. But when you listen, you've a lot of energy with you. So I find anyways that I always go away and I'm like, oh my God, that's a little bit of a light bulb moment. But when you done a podcast recently, I heard you talking about subconsciously selling, and I just found it really interesting. And it was actually, it came up about 2, 3 weeks ago where someone was talking about passive selling. And I was like, wow, I've never really heard a lot about this
Mm.
subject. And then you talked about subconscious selling. And I'd love to hear a little bit about that, because I know personally speaking and knowing a lot of retailers, we don't hear a lot about this. So, can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Well, unconscious, subconscious selling is like we're already getting that every time,
Mm,
everywhere, and all the time. If we have a look around where we are now, and we see subliminal ads everywhere online, we're everywhere on the world, but it's planting the right seed in people's minds so they build up an image in their head. And the way that we work as human beings, that we're emotional human beings, we see, smell, hear, so on and so forth. So we use central information when we describe something. And the best way to make a really good impact with people is to build up a narrative around something that they resonate with and they like and they can connect with. I'm keep using the words connection because it's so key when we actually are speaking with people, and to create these stories, these metaphors, these analogies that really help keep people connected, and use your language in the correct way that it should be understood. So you're jumping in my head and vice versa, and I'm jumping in your head, because you build up these pictures around things.
mm,
But you know, when you say, I don't know if you have kids, I don't think you do, but you probably will do it at some stage. And when they're running down the road and you say, don't run, what do people hear? What do the kids hear? All they're hearing is run.
yeah,
They're not hearing stop. So maybe you just need to say to your kids, would you mind slowing down just for a moment?
yeah.
So it's all to do with your tone and your tonality. It's how you project yourself in the correct way so you can think about things in the right and positive way. So you notice that I've used my language in the correct way, because what I want you to do now is just to remember things in the correct and understand that these things are right for you. We're here selling a product, but we're really here to understand how this product will work with you and make sure that this product actually sits in your pocket and then it's reachable as and when you actually need it. Does that make sense? And you can have it. So products will be there to be used. You're planting the seeds inside people's head in an integral way, in a
Mm,
not manipulative way,
mm,
but a way that is good for the person and the way that is good for the customers, that they can feel valued and that they can feel good. And we get it all the time. We all want to buy it all the time. I'm planting seeds in my mind all the time because I want to buy something else.
yeah.
Uh, we do that all the time to ourselves, but marketeers are extremely good at that, in planting seeds in your head, that you, when you're walking down the high street or you're going online, you go, oh, I want that. And these listening devices, phones and all that, they're throwing stuff at us subconsciously and unconsciously, so it's resonating in our head.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, because sometimes we don't realize it. And it can be word of mouth, it can be a post we've seen, it can be. And it was quite interesting when you were talking about that pen scenario there. I don't know if you realized it, but you obviously done it on purpose. You actually said the word need, and but it was said in a way where I said, where is my pen?
Have you got a
No,
pen? I've got
I,
loads of them here.
I
I've got a whole
like,
collection.
yeah, I actually, where is my, like, I kind of was thinking about a pen, and then you mentioned pocket. So I did visualize a pen, a pocket, and then I actually looked for my pen, and it was over there to the right of me. But it was actually, it's really interesting, I think. And I think language, as you said, is super important. You touched on connection. Storytelling in brands, I found it super powerful when I used to work on the shop floor with my team. That a lot of the brands I found that done really well were that there was this bit of a story behind it. It wasn't just sitting on the shelf.
Hmm.
And I work with a lot of women that are selling, they're starting a product-based business, and we always go back to the kind of story piece. How important do you think that is in building a relationship, or selling for you?
Oh, it's hugely important. It's
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that you can ever do, and making feel people feel special. Like depending on the service or the product that you actually have,
Mhm.
it's just imagining what it would be like once they do have it and they do start to experience having it. It's like I'm looking for a new phone at the moment because my one's just I've had it for a year and a half and I just get annoyed with it after. But I pictured in my mind what I want to have, and you can do that to your staff. You can do that in a positive way to motivate your team. Like I just transferred a little bit of time. Motivation is all intrinsic. It's all inside of you. When you think about how to motivate others within your team and your retail team, is to find out what motivates them. What are their outcomes? What do they need? What do they want? What are their desires? Especially if they're motivated by commission, and a lot of people do get small amounts of commission. But what will that commission mean to them once they actually have that commission? What they're going to buy? What they're going to do? What they're going to spend it on? How they're going to use it? But how are they going to engage with the clients and customers to make their approach even better so they feel special, and then the commission will come automatically. So the motivated is to help people get what they want, and that's the key, helping others to get what they want. Once you start to feel needy, once you start to feel ah I'm coming towards the end of the month, and it happens in every industry. You start to feel stressed. Uh, People see the stress that you're going through. They see it straight away, and it's off-putting to the other person in professional relationships and in personal relationships. That happens once you get those stressful situations that come up in their head. So I jumped around a little bit as I was thinking of something else. Just had my smoothie, so lots of sugars running through my head.
I suppose rejection, you talk a lot about, and I hear this as well, and I've heard you talk a little bit around this, dealing with rejection. And I think this can be a tricky one, especially when you're in a customer facing environment. So when we're on a call, I think it's maybe a little bit different. But when we're facing, and I always used to say that, this is our stage. So when you're on that shop floor, that's nearly your stage. It's nearly a performance. You're showcasing how brilliant the brand is and da da da. But I suppose the rejection piece, like, what do you find are the biggest obstacles for people overcoming those rejections? Because I find a lot of the time it does affect their confidence.
Does.
It really does, and I think especially at the beginning of their journey, they they really do take it personal, especially if they're new in sales. They find it hard to overcome that a little bit, and their confidence might take a knock. What would you say would be something that you would maybe work with on if you had that issue in front of you right now? How would you deal with that?
Well, the key thing with that happens in all areas of
Yeah.
business. So whether
Yeah.
you're in retail, whether you're on the phone, whether you're having a one-to-one meeting, business meeting, or whatever, I always say no means not right now, because there's always someone else as well. As long as your pipeline is good, as long as the customer experience is good, as long as you feel good in yourself, like what actually happens when you do feel rejected, your body language goes down, your shoulders go down, your head goes down, your tonality goes down, your breathing goes shallow, and it goes from the top. And for some people, you go a little bit blotchy. And it is one of those things that you just have to change. Try and do what you can when you do it, is to change your state. Um,
Yeah.
the challenge again is our flight or freeze mechanism is we run, we stay there, or we freeze. And the mechanisms in the modern world is anxiety, stress, and there's been a lot of that over the last couple of years. And it's dealing with it in the right way. It's understanding that it's not you, because it's not you. It's the transference of information between you rejecting and you actually feeling it inside. Look, there's plenty more customers around, so it's
Mm,
practice, and it is resilience. It's a challenging thing to do. It's a challenging
mm,
thing to master. It
mm,
is patience. It's speaking to other people. It's speaking to your colleagues, your friends, your manager. other people around you, and talk about what actually went on and get their understanding. Uh, so the next time said, well, that happened to me, but the next time I did that. So try different things and make sure that it's it's being comfortable in your own skin again, especially when you're new into sales. It's really, you're thrown out there and you're terrified, and then someone rejects you and you think it's personal, but it's not personal at all. It's just the way
Mm,
it is. But it's once you understand that, once you're comfortable in your own skin, speak to people around you, uh, do a role play, do other things like that, so it becomes a muscle. That muscle that you have to exercise, which is that resilience muscle,
mm,
and it takes time and it takes practice and it takes effort to do it correctly. It's no easy thing. We all still get it, and we all
mm.
still get rejection. And sometimes, depending on our state of mind, let's be practical about this. It can affect you tomorrow, it could affect me today, whatever. But then it's our bounce back. How do we bounce back from that to make yourself feel good again? And it's getting that back into the state. To, between you and me, I like to listen to comedy, but on the retail floor, you might not have that. But have something that makes you smile.
Yeah.
Make someone have a joke with you, so you just get back giddy again. So you can feel good. Once you can smile, you just notice the difference. You're a really smiley person. I've always noticed that about yourself, Louise. You're very smiling. There's always a beam. There's a nice energy around you. So it's getting that energy back and making
Yeah.
yourself feel good.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and I think you brought up two kind of things there. I think that people can definitely take in, and it's having that resiliency set. I talk about it, the bounce back ability. So it's like a little bouncy ball. How do we bounce
Yeah,
back again? And I think the role play that you said, and having that little bit of fun as well. That when it does happen, that it's not, in your head, it might seem like a life or death situation, that you've
yeah,
lost this and, it's all on the line and it's not really, but, having that kind of that foresight, but also by talking to those people and hashing it out, that it can maybe take away the seriousness or
yeah,
you might feel disappointed or whatever that might be. I think it's really good. And I think at the moment, with COVID and stuff, people are trying to claw back money that they've missed. They're
yeah,
trying to get their sales up, and they're feeling that people are coming in and they're not converting as much. So I think definitely holding it in and building, like you said, the relationship. And something what we used to do was I used to always say, if we can just go into work and make the customers our friends, if we have a new friend, that we've actually done something positive, and it won't always result in the sale that day, but they will come back, even
absolutely.
a couple of weeks later, and they pop in if they're buying their bread and the baker's down the road, and they pop in and just say, hello, how are you today, Louise? And we come up, we'd have a bit like with you. I wouldn't hand out a beer now, I'd probably be fired, but we would talk away about what they had, in their bag, if they went to
Yeah,
the bakery, or if they had a coffee, do they have their normal latte, or whatever that might be. You'd have a little bit of a nash about it. So I do think that's really super important. Where do you see the kind of future of sales? Because there's this big focus at the moment on digital and experiential and all of this sort of thing. Where do you see it going? We know that digital is going to play a big role in customer experiences and stuff like that. Where do you see kind of that side of things going with sales going down the line?
Um, like I did a presentation in Silicon Valley, probably in 2016, in front of VCs about people tracking, and the experience within the shop. I was working in people tracking at the time,
Wow.
which is uh, connecting people as they come into the store and then connecting to the tills. But we were talking about artificial intelligence at that point. We're talking about everything connected with that and then going up into the cloud. So we have a real-time data about the people that come in. So where we were going is the experience that, with facial recognition, understanding who's coming in, happy, sad, or indifferent. So there's going to be a lot more of that within
Mm,
there. But really, I think we still have to go back down to, with all this technology, digital, and all that, there's still that connection between people,
mm,
and the soft skills is just hugely important. And I think everything that I read, everything I understand about that, sometimes digital is a bit of a screen in front of
Yeah.
us. It's a bit of a blocker, but we just need to move those things away and get back to the grassroots of things, is to connect with people on the emotional levels that people like. That's why people like going into shops and stores now. It is great to go onto Amazon or wherever you shop and get stuff that's instant, and
Mm.
start to know all the delivery drivers once they come in. But really, it is about that experience, and you want to feel special. You want to feel on the next level. That's why if you go to the US and you go to any retail store, they just like fall over themselves to make you feel good inside. Maybe they're incentivized that way. So a lot more of that, a lot
Mm.
more feeling special, a lot more of a connection and being understood, and those soft skills. So I've probably said soft skills enough times, really, but it's so powerful. It
Yeah.
really is.
I think I read somewhere that the biggest skills gap, I think it's for 2030, they're predicting 2030, is actually what you said there. So it's actually those soft skills, those people skills that we talk about, those interpersonal skills that you're talking about, the relationship building skills. Because what happened with COVID, even though it fast forward, a lot of amazing things have come out of it. I think for a lot of people, it has, and what you've said there, caused that little bit of a block with
Mm,
connecting and communicating with each other. And I've seen it. I've gone to some events, and there's still that little bit of weariness, and there's still that little bit of, you know, and I can understand it's still quite prevalent at the moment with the COVID. But I definitely see that. And I hear people saying sometimes, bricks and mortar won't exist and all of this. And I'm like, no, no, it will, because people need to connect to people. And
yeah,
that I think will be more used as a, what you said there, as a connection tool. Really is connecting, and it's a community feel. And the story you gave about going in with the beer, I think it's one of those stories that if you could encapsulate what it is it does for people,
yeah,
emotionally, mentally, it's what you just said there in that story. So I just think it was really super powerful.
yeah. It's just getting people to come back, people to feel special, and they will come back. And it's, if you have the sale in mind, then you've lost it. But if you, again, people will come back, because they might just be browsing, and they might
Yeah.
come if you're good to them. They will remember that, and then they will come back in virtually in a day two. I think you've already alluded to that already. They will come back again
Mm.
at some stage.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I think and I've seen it. And we would do a lot of we used to do people stopping. So where we would go out onto the high street, Jason, and we would give out samples if we
Yeah.
had a product launch or whatever that was. And we always used to measure, because obviously we've you touched on there, you trackers, we would have footfall counters. So we would measure the amount of people coming into the business and divide it into the amount of sales that go through
Mm.
the till. So to measure that conversion in the business. But we would all, the team would get a little bit disheartened, because they would go, I've really worked hard, Louise. I've been out, talking to the customers. And I said, you're creating a hype. We're just creating that atmosphere, and we're building relationships. And if all we do is have a nice conversation with someone, they'll remember it. Because how many times have you been out shopping, where you've had a really nice conversation with someone that you've remembered,
Mm.
and you've gone home and you've told someone, oh my God, I had this amazing interaction with this person, and they were so friendly and whatever. And what actually happened when we do those events where we go out onto the high street, out into the shopping malls, we don't see the return of investment that day.
Yeah.
And what I really say is that, and even though we're using man hours in the business, we're paying people, we'd have extra people in to do these events. I would say don't look at it now, but come back to me in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and I will guarantee you that you'll see a difference in those figures based on it. And what we've done was we had these cards with these codes, so we were able to scan the QR codes, so we knew who we gave the codes out to. We were able to track that over the 6 week period. And it was really amazing to see, because you have to remember as well, if you're doing this at the beginning of the month, a lot of people don't get paid till the end of the month. So
Yeah.
but they have the card and they have you, and they have that memory. And a lot of them came in and they said, the blonde lady. And they were like, oh, who's the blonde lady in here? And, you know, I'd be like, oh, was it me on that day or was it the other blonde girl? You know, so they'd remember you by your hair color, whatever that is, or if you remember the conversation. But it would always work super well. So I totally understand that bit. And I think definitely retailers, if we can do more of that, what you said, Jason, more around the relationship first, the sale second. And I know some people that are in sales are going to go, don't say that, but I'm going to say it because I think it just it doesn't work any other way. I don't think
Yeah.
it works any
I
way
was gonna. I was just about while you're thinking that took me back
around.
to my retail days in London. I think what has to be done. Every town, every city looks the same with the same shops. But how can you stand out? How
Yeah,
can you be the difference that makes the difference? If you have an audience and people walking past, sometimes they have a bit of a blank
yeah,
of they have their heads down,
tunnel
they're
vision.
stuck in
Yeah,
their phone. If you can get out onto the street, then
yeah,
be on the street and then invite people in, engage with the conversation, have a conversation with people, whatever it might be. You might even have a flyer, you might have something else, but engage with people outside of the store.
yeah,
Because when you're in retail, you expect people to come in.
yeah.
But when you're quiet, what do you do? And you're just sitting around going, well, go outside and get them
Wow.
in.
Yeah,
Go out. And that's what I used to do. I used to
yeah,
be in a big shopping centre in the West End. And when it was quiet, I had to go out and get people in.
yeah,
That's the only way that you can
mm,
measure success is bringing people into the space,
yeah.
even if they just want to have a look. And then you made that connection, you made that difference.
Yeah, you've introduced them to the brand. So,
Yeah.
like, I find that so, and I could never understand why other businesses wouldn't do it. I would think you've so much, it's such a big playing field. And I remember being in a store and it was there 4 years. And every time I went outside the store to bring customers in, it was the same thing. Oh, I never knew you existed. And
Yeah,
literally,
exactly.
it's a
Exactly.
massive building. And I would go, they'd be like, are you new open? And I go, no, no, we've been here 4 years, like 4 years, you know, and these are people that lived in the local community. Some of them lived up the road and they said,
Yeah.
I'm so used to just going the same way to work that I don't look at anything. So they go to their same shops.
Yep.
They're in, you know, they're in their routine and they go to the same coffee shop. They stop off the same places, but it would make such a difference to business and to sales. And even from a brand perspective, you noticed it by going outside that people actually were, oh, how are you introduced to the brand? Oh, I actually was walking down and this lovely lady gave me some hand cream. This lovely lady gave me a little bit of this, whatever it might be. And it works so well, Jason. And like you said, we can get caught up sometimes in the four walls we're in, that we forget that there's a big wide world to step outside the shop, and there's so many
Absolutely.
opportunities. There's so many opportunities. Um, what we done before was we had I don't know if you've seen this, a live window. So we actually had someone that was making product actually in the window. So when people were passing by, they would go, oh, what's going on in there? And it would actually bring traffic into the store as well. So it's been innovative and a little bit
Yeah.
creative, and seeing something a little bit different, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
No,
sometimes
absolutely.
yeah, we get used to seeing the same mannequins on the window. And there was something that Tiffany's, they're a big jewelry company in the US, done. I just thought it was a fantastic idea. So they had all of this traffic come by their store, but they have a very innovative way to stop traffic. So what they done was they had about 8 mouse traps. So this is a dark window, 8 mouse traps, and there was cheese on 7 of the mouse traps. But on one of the mouse traps, there was this emerald, beautiful emerald diamond, and there was a mouse, and he had
Hmm.
the diamond in his hand, you know, and it was saying he didn't want the cheese, he wanted the diamond. But it was just so impactful, minimalistic. But it, and the thing was, they weren't looking to sell every single thing in their shop. And I think this is what retailers don't really understand. We're not looking to sell everything in our shop in our windows, but that window created so much impact that it brought people in that were curious. So I think
Yep.
sometimes we can be very creative around making these traffic stopping and getting people footfall into the stores, that I think is quite innovative. Yeah.
Yeah, just pivot, do something
Yes.
different, be creative. When it's quiet, be even more creative, because you have
Yeah.
to inspire people to actually see who you are, where you're situated, and bring them in and go, remind them of what you do.
Mm.
That's the key, and that's the essence of it.
Thank you, Jason. Loads of learnings today. I think for anyone that didn't catch the beginning of this, just to summarize, we're really talking about paraphrasing back, mirroring your customer. You don't have to be an extrovert in order to sell. You can be an introvert, and that also works super well. Role playing with your team, and making it as authentic as you can. So that's definitely an individualized approach, and getting people to come up with their own way of selling, a little bit like we have our own management style, we have our own way of selling, our own way of operating. So definitely getting your team together, doing a little bit of a workshop around that, and talking about resilience and bounce back ability.
Mm.
Scenarios around this: how can we get the team involved, how can we create a safe environment outside of store hours, whereby we're talking about these, we're also dealing with it and seeing how we can work around them in our day-to-day life. Jason, how can people reach out to you? Because I'm sure they've heard loads of nuggets and they're like, I want to talk to Jason.
Uh, uh, LinkedIn. You can find me all over LinkedIn. I'm here. Instagram, Jason A. Cooper. Twitter, Jason A. Cooper. My website, jasoncooper.io. So remember that, jasoncooper.io. I'm all over that. I have lots of good videos. I also have a wonderful podcast called The Global Sales Leader. It's been voted the up and coming podcast in sales leadership for 2021 and 2022. I'm actually number 15 in that. So delighted with that. But I do it because I like it and I learn from other people. That's the reason I do it, because I get a really good experience. I get some really good connections with other people globally that I can just pick up the phone to anytime. So lots of reasons why I do it, not only because I want to be top, but that it's just the human interaction and building those really good people and learning loads. So that's the way I look at things.
You're so modest. You're a really modest person, Jason, and down to earth person. And I think anyone that meets you or that interacts with you can see that, and you're genuinely a really helpful person. And I think anyone that does work with you, they'll be super lucky to have you cheering them on and supporting them in a coaching piece or whatever that might be. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
I've really
you.
enjoyed talking to you. And check out Jason if you haven't listened to his podcast and you're in the sales field. Please listen to it. Pen and paper. You'll have some really great tips and tricks on what to do in your business and how to be a great salesperson. Thanks so much, Jason.
Take care. Cheers.